Hi there, it's Mindy from My Creative Scoop, and I'm back with another Copic marker tutorial for my favorite things. This month I'm using this brand new stamp set called Bring Out the Sunshine, and I'm going to be focusing on coloring red in this video. But I am going to show you how to color her from start to finish. So we're going to have some skin coloring and hair, as well as basic shadowing. I've stamped my image in Memento Desert Sand so I can get that no line look, and I'm using my Copic Express It blending card. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is add some pink to her cheeks. I'm going to be using R32 and R30. So I'm going to take my R32 and directly underneath her eyes, I'm just going to add a little pink dot. Then I'm going to take my R30 and I'm just going to come out a little bit more. So I'm just making that circle a little bit bigger, blending out that R32. And then now let's go ahead and take that E13 and just right at the brim of her hat and just right along the top part of her, or along her hair, we're just going to go ahead and make a little bit of a shadow. I'm going to come on the inside part of her ear and just give it a little trace underneath her neck, and also on the inside of her arm and along the bottom of her pants onto her legs, since her pants will be casting a shadow onto her legs. And we'll go a little bit right over that shoulder where her strap is. So now I'm going to take my E11 and I'm just going to come out a little bit more. So I'm just going to do little baby flicks. And with each new lighter color that we use, we're just coming out just a little bit more so it starts to fill in, but still keeping the darkest part in the shadowed areas. So now I'm going to take my E00 and we're going to do the exact same thing. I'm just going to come out a little bit more. And now with my E000, the same thing. I'm going to get a nice blend right along the edge of that E00. And then I'm just going to go ahead and take the E000 and just fill in the rest of the face. So after you get a nice blend right along the edge of that E00, then you'll just go ahead and finish filling in the skin. Now you're going to notice it still looks kind of blotchy, and that's because we need to add a second coat. So I'm going to go back and repeat that. I'm going to lay down the colors in the exact same order, in the exact same places that I added it in the first place. So I'm going to take my E13, go right back to where I added the E13 the first time, and then I'm going to take my E11 and do the exact same thing, coming out just a little bit more, just like how we did the first time. And now my E00, the exact same thing. This time I'm going to do a heavier flick so it fills in more of the skin using this color, so it's not so light in the center. Now I'm going to take my E000 and go ahead and fill in all the lighter part on the skin. I'm going to go back with my E00 just to do that heavy flick again so I can get a nice smooth blend. And I don't want that center to be as light, so that's why I'm going to go back over it. And then I'm also going to go over, since we stayed really light on this side, and I want to blend out that pink part for the cheek a little bit more. So I'm just going to go over it and I'm just going to repeat adding that little bit of E00 in that, on that side of the face, so that way it blends it out. I'm going to take my E000 again and just touch up that little bit to blend out that E00. And then one more time with my E00 onto the chest. It needs to be a little bit darker for that shadow. I'm actually going to take my E11 again just to blend out that a little bit directly under her neck. Okay, so she's all ready. We're going to go ahead and color her hair. I'm going to make her hair brown, so I'm going to start with my E33, and I'm also going to be using E37 and E31. So I'm going to start with my E37, and I'm just going to trace right along the brim of the hat, since that's going to be a shadowed area. And then I'm going to come down each of those little strands. I'm just going to give a little flick. And then also back here where her braid is, right in the center. So it's just a little bit of color. And then I'm going to take my E33, and we want to pull that shadow down, so we're going to have it come out just a little bit more. And then also in the center part of the braid. I'm going to make a line just for some more texture. So now I'm going to take my E31 and go one swipe over just to fill in all of the hair. We don't want any white showing, and we don't want to go over it and blend out those lines, so that way it looks like hair texture. I'm actually going to go back with my E37 and just give a little bit more texture. And then again with my E33. And we'll go make a little bit more textured back there. So I'm just adding some little lines. And then she's got a couple little strands right over here. So I'm taking my E33 and I'm just going to go right along the bottom part of them. And then we'll take the E31 and fill it in, but leaving that darker shadow along the edge. If you want, you could take, I'm going to take my E37 again, just to add a little bit of a darker shadow directly underneath the brim of the hat. I'm going to add a little bit more right along the top there, just to make that shadow a little bit more defined. Okay. So we are moving on. Let's go ahead and color her hat. I'm going to color it white. So I'm going to take my N0, N3, and a little bit of N5. I'm going to start with my N3, And we want to make a shadow. Since this is the inside part underneath the hat, we want to make a little shadow underneath there. So I'm just going to trace that line and make a little bit of a solid area just right in that little corner. And the same thing over here. And then we're going to take the N0, and we just want to soften up that harsh line, and we want to give a kind of a heavy flick so that way it blends nicely into the white. So it's just that little area right in the center part directly underneath the hat that's shadowed. So the trick to coloring white is to leave a white space and just shadow the certain areas. So I'm going to take my N5 and just give it a little bit more definition. So I'm really thinking about just outlining the image and just making this little corner a little bit deeper with that shadow. And then I'm going to go back with my N3. Very, very little bit of color goes a long way here. So you just want to kind of give a little flick just to blur out that harsh line. And then we're going to go back with that N0 and give it a little touch up so that way it fades. So we're going to do the exact same thing for the top part. We're going to take that N3 and we want to trace right along where the hair, right where the hair is. So I'm just going to make it a little bit deeper. So I'm just going to take my marker and just lay it right above that N3. Still leaving that white along the top, but that way it's just a little bit shadowed going around the brim. So we're going to go ahead and do the top part of the hat. It's going to be the same thing. I'm going to take that N3 right where on this line right here where the flowers are. I'm just going to trace along the top, and it's going to look like I'm tracing the top of this part of the hat, but it's actually the back part, the top of that back part, right where the flowers are. And then I'm going to take my N0 and do the same thing. Just come right above it. We can go over it a couple of times just to make the shadow a little bit deeper. And I'm going to go back with my N3 because I feel like it needs to be a little bit thicker. And then again with my N0. And then again with my N3. Since we are doing the no line technique, I'm just going to trace out the outline a little bit right where the shadow is the deepest, just so it can look a little bit finished, because I mean you don't see some of that brown. And then let's take the N0. And I'm just going to go over the outline from the desert sand ink, just so it has more of a grayish tone in it, not so much brown. And we'll do the top too. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and color her little shorts also white. So notice I want to color everything on before we start the red, so that way I don't take any chances of pulling some of that red into the gray. So I'm going to start with my N3, and there's going to be a shadow directly underneath her shirt. So I'm just going to trace right along the edge here. And then with my N0, come out a little bit more. That way there's that little bit of a shadow. So let's go ahead and start coloring her her shirt, we're going to be using R39, R37, and R35, and also R32. Okay, so we're going to start with R39, and we're going to add color to the areas where it's going to be the shadows, so the darkest points. So on her little strap, I'm going to add a little bit of color, and then also along the little band here where it kind of gets a little bit tighter and you have these little pleats coming down, so I'm going to trace those. And then also right where her hair is going to be casting a shadow onto her dress, we want it to be a little bit darker right around this flower that's on her hair. And you're going to go all the way down her arm, right along the side of it. And then also we're going to add a little bit of a shadow on the opposite side of this arm. So I'm just going to trace right along the edge and underneath her hand. So it's just a little bit of color to start off with. Thicken those lines up a little bit. Okay, so now we're going to take that R37 and we're going to come out a little bit more. So with the pleats, I'm going to make them a little bit longer, pulling that color down so that way it drags the color out, getting a little bit lighter with each new color that we bring. And then I'm going to take my R35, get a nice blend along that edge there, and then we're going to go ahead and do the same thing. We're going to pull this pleat going down, and we're also going to come right along the edge of the dress right there. So I'm going to fill in most of her dress now. You want to make sure you get a nice blend right along the edge of that R35 before you just go ahead and start coloring out. What happens then is if you just start going all the way across, you're going to have that harsh line between the two colors. So you want to get a nice blend before you do that one swipe over. So it's nice and blended out. Actually, let's add a little bit of that R32 just to make it a little bit lighter. So I'm going to get a nice blend right along the edge of that R35. And then we're going to just fill the rest of it in. So now we're going to repeat that. We want to add a little bit more. We want to add some more color down so that way the colors start to moving and really give us that nice blend. So I'm going to take my R39. I'm going to repeat those pleats. So I'm going to stay in the exact same areas where I first added the R39. You don't want to add any color anywhere else, and you don't want to go back over the lighter colors over this darker color, because then the color starts to separate and you really have to sorry, I get so into my coloring, but you can't go back over. It's going to start separating the color and it's going to get really blotchy, and it's going to end up looking really flat. So let's add a little bit more of the R39 up here. And now the same thing with the R37. I'm just going to come out a little bit more, getting a nice blend from that R39. And then with my R35, pull those pleats down, get a nice blend along that R37. Now since we already have that R32 down and I don't want to go back and add more of that, what I'm going to do is just take my R35, which is what I'm using, and just do a heavy flick going down into this lighter color. So that way you see that it's nice and blended right in there, and I just have those few lines. So now I'm going to take my R32 and I'm going to go in reverse. I'm not going to pull the dark out like how I would normally do. I'm going to go backwards. So I'm going to flick going in. It's going to blend it out a little bit easier. So that way it has more of a finished look. I'm going to go back with my R35. And then I'm going to go back with my R32, kind of back and forth, just to get enough color down and for those colors to meet. Now I want to really deepen that shadow, so I'm actually going to go back with my N5 and just touch up certain areas so it looks a little bit more defined. So I want the strap to have that shadow right along the bottom part that's going back. So I just added a little bit of a line right in there. I'm going to do the same thing right behind the hair. And along the arms, right along the side of the arm there. And then also for the pleats. So I'm just going to give a little flick going down, and that's it. I'm not going to try to bring that line down. So now I'm going to take my R39, and I want to go back over the N5 because I don't want this to be gray. I want it to be a darker version of this red color. So I'm going to go back and give it a little touch up so that way there's got some red tones to that gray. And then I'm going to flick this N5 going down the pleat, making it drag down a little bit. Then I'm going to take my R37, pull it down a little bit further. And then my R35. And I don't like how pink this is. I really want it to look more red. So I'm just going to take my R35 and go one swipe up just to kind of get rid of that R32. That way it looks just more red and not necessarily blending into a pinkish color. So now I'm going to take my R39 because I could see that I kind of got it out of the line. I don't know if I went out of the lines a little bit or if I just didn't color it fully, but I'm just going to trace right along the edge there. It's going to look like I'm just bringing out her little sleeve. And then I'm also, this is a great way to cover up mistakes. So if you went out of the lines a little bit, all you have to do is just expand the line. So right here it looks a little wavy. So I'm just going to take my R39 and I'm just going to make the line a little bit more. So it just looks like her dress is coming out a little bit more. And I'm going to do the same thing over here because it's gotten a little bit wavy. And then I'm going to take my R37 and I'm going to extend that line going down just a little so it matches. And then I'm going to make a little bit of a shadow right where it's curling in. All right, so I'm going to go back with my E13, which is one of the skin tones, and I'm just going to start to trace her nose just along the top there. And then I'm going to take my E11 and continue. So there's a little bit of a shadow behind her nose. And then I'm going to take my E00. That way it looks like her nose is kind of coming off the paper. And then I'm going to take my N5 and I'm just going to make her eyes a little bit darker so we can see them, since it's the no line look and I use the Memento Desert Sand. You can't really see her eyes, so I just want to make those stand out a little bit more. So let's go ahead and give her some light pink little flowers in her hair. So we're going to use the R32 and the R30, the same colors that we used for her cheeks. And I'm going to start with my R32, and I'm just going to fill in the petals on the flowers. And then I'm going to take my R32, and right in between the flowers and closest to the center part of the flower, I'm just going to add a little bit of color, just defining each of those petals a little bit. And then we're going to go back with my R30 and just give a little touch up so that way softens up that R32. So now we're going to color the little leaves on the side. First we have to, let's color the one in her hair as well. So we're going to take the R30 and fill in the little petals, and then the R32 just right around the center of the flower. And let's take Y02, and we're just going to add little dots for the centers. It's very subtle. And then let's take the YG17 and YG13, which is my favorite spring green color combination. So I'm going to start with my YG17, and right behind the flower we're going to add a little bit of a shadow. And then we're going to take the YG13 and just fill in the rest of the little leaf. So let's go ahead and color her little shoes. I'm going to make them just a really dark gray, almost like a black. But since it's such a small area, I'm just going to take my N3 and I'm going to fill in the entire shoe. I'm just going to color it all the way in. And the little strap. And then I'm going to take my N5 and just right along the bottom of the shoe, we're just going towards the back, I'm just going to add a little bit of N5 just so there's a little bit of a two-toned. So the same thing over here, just right at the back of the heel, a little bit coming up on that little strap. So there's just a little bit of definition. Then we're going to blend it out using the N3 again. So I'm just going to come right back over and just kind of push that N5 out a little bit more. Alright, so there we have it. We've learned how to color in shade red. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and I will see you again next month. Have a great day.